Hey everyone, Chris Carter here. It's the Locked On Steelers podcast, joined today by Nick Farabaugh of PennLive.com. We're going to be talking about the offensive line, just how much better can they actually be this year, and should they actually be, and what kind of a difference can that make for Aaron Rodgers? That and more here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things on the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find the show in your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of your daily Monday through Friday episodes, as well as our bonus content. We thank you for making us your first listen every day, because we're your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets when you hit on your first bet of $5 or more on FanDuel later. As I said before, we're joined by the man himself, Nick Farabaugh. He's back in the house from PennLive.com, Steelers reporter there. Nick, it's that time of the year where things have slowed down, so we get to take a closer look at things. But the thing that I will not slow down about, that I will keep pounding the table about, is that if everyone's looking at Aaron Rodgers and DK Metcalf and those guys and Jalen Ramsey, those are all flashy and nice, and those are the bells and whistles that everyone's going to be paying attention to. I am still looking at the biggest key for the Steelers to accomplish this year is the development of this offensive line and how far they can get. Because if they properly develop that unit, if Broderick Joneees, Frazier, Troy Fautanu, Mason McCormick, Seumalo become a good unit this year and a consistently good unit this year, this team, the window that's going to open up for them in the very near future could be pretty wide.
It's like a commonality for most of these really good teams. They have good O-lines. I wonder why. It's not surprising. And the Steelers, specifically their formula to winning, Chris, and how they want to win at their idealistic stage is going to be running the football efficiently, getting explosive off play action, throwing the ball deep every now and then. But all of this stuff requires quality offensive line play. You can't run a really good wide zone scheme without having quality athletes and really good offensive line play in front of those running backs. It's really hard to do that, Chris. Even though the schemes, and we talk about McVay and Shanahan, LaFleur, and all these guys that are so good coming from that system, all these teams build up their offensive lines. And Arthur Smith, when he had his best offense, had a pretty good offensive line in Tennessee. I think that's the one thing people kind of forget about when we talk about Arthur Smith's tenure in Tennessee, is that offensive line was pretty good that he had. And they were able to get lanes for Derrick Henry, and they were able to get things going in the play action game because they were able to really stand back there and allow Tannehill to stand back there and read defenses off play action. They didn't have to worry about him turning around and getting flattened off the left tackle. And so you look at all the questions the Steelers have while also having a lot of optimism they have on this offensive line. I'm with you. I don't actually think there's a bigger thing this year than how this offensive line works. Not just for this year, honestly, either, Chris, for the future. Because some of these guys don't hit, then I think it's big time step back for their future and how they're going to build. So huge year for this offensive line. And I think it's going to determine a lot of what this team is now and in the future.
Absolutely. As always, if you ever want to get your call on the show, because we do have a call in line for you to call in and get your questions on the show, you can call the number 412-223-6644. Leave your name, where you're from, keep your question under a minute, and we're happy to get you on the show. We go out to Joel in Iron River, Michigan, who asked about the offensive line and kind of has a question similar along these lines. Take it away, Joel.
Hi, Chris. This is Joel Moffitt from Iron River, Michigan. First of all, I love your show, and particularly like Alan Saunders. That guy, he knows his stuff, and if you want to believe something, believe him. And also, congratulations on your upcoming nuptials. But anyway, my question is, everybody's all, talking about Aaron Rodgers and DK Metcalf and the speedy receivers and how Jalen Warren and, potentially the running back, and now that Johnny Smith and Freiermuth and how they're going to all work this out. But my question is, why aren't they talking about our offensive line? Because without our offensive line doing their job, which is potentially the weakness of our offense by far, they're not going to be able to do anything with those rest of them people aren't going to be able to do anything. So, and the lack of depth also concerns me. But I want to know your thoughts on that, why nobody's even really bringing it up, because I think it's a poignant observance, at least at my mind. But anyway, love your show. Keep doing the good work. Bye.
Thank you, Joel. As always, you can call like Joel did at 412-223-6644. Leave your name, where you're from. Keep your question under a minute. We'll try to get your question on the show. Also, we have like over 80 calls right now of you guys that we have not used yet. So like, if we don't get to them, that's why. But we're trying to get to as many as we can. So please keep calling. We'll keep logging them in and keep trying to get you guys in. We got more questions to answer in this episode. But Nick, I feel Joel, because I think this is something that you and I do, Alan and I do, and like there are certain people, like the people that are in the building that we're the Steelers reporters who also do these shows pretty consistently. If you follow our work, you're more in tune with what the Steelers are actually about, and you know the offensive line, that is the crux of what this year is. But if you're watching ESPN, if you're watching NFL Network, and not to like go after those people, unless it's like Brooke Pryor, who's with us every day and is doing the things, and Brooke knows what the deal is. If you're talking to those national heads and they're just kind of talking from what they see, from never coming from the facility, never having on a live reporter who's in the facility all the time, they're often coming from the perspective, oh, well, they're just going to talk about Aaron Rodgers. They're going to talk about this. That's why you don't hear it, because oftentimes when you hear those bigger shows that have those really big followings and are talking about everything big in the NFL, they're not going to be as familiar with the situations. That's why you're not going to hear it. But also the other thing, Nick, and you and I both know this from just being football nerds, offensive line isn't sexy to talk about. It's not the fun thing that gets everyone going. Oh, great, more blocking. But it is the gritty thing that is necessary to winning, especially in the NFL.
Yeah, it's not flashy, and people don't talk about it a lot on major networks because, again, it doesn't draw in ratings either, right? I mean, it's not something that people love to hear about. No one's debating if Broderick Jones is making the switch from right to left tackle on ESPN. It's just not something that we see. Obviously, though, if you're a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, that is one of the most important questions. I actually am. If there were top three questions this year, two of them would be on the offensive line. It would be, how does Broderick make the switch over to left tackle, and what does Troy Fautanu look at right tackle? Like, honestly, those are two of the top three questions I have. And so all of this matters. But especially Aaron Rodgers, when we talk about him, he's 41 years old, going to be 42, Chris. Listen, Chris, I think even from when he was like 38, the hits just feel different when you're 41. They just do. I mean, you saw it last year with the Jets. The Jets tried to surround him with a good offensive line, and unfortunately, some of those guys got hurt, and guys like Tyron Smith just fell off. Yeah. And he just got battered all year. And that's why the quick game was so prevalent in his game. He would fade away from passes, not step into throws. The accuracy waned a little bit because he didn't trust his offensive line. And when you're an older quarterback like that, and you can't necessarily scramble on like you did when you were 28, it makes all the more difference to have an offensive line that you could stand back there, scan the field, and make the right reads with. And so having a really solid offensive line is so important for the Steelers this year because it does directly affect the type of player I think Aaron Rodgers becomes for the offense and the type of plays that you're able to call for DK Metcalf and Jonnu Smith and Pat Freiermuth and other guys like that. So this is such a big question. I actually think, Chris, and maybe I'm interested to see what you feel about this. I actually like the interior. I think Seumalo, Frazier, and McCormick are probably going to be three really solid players. I have a few questions about McCormick. Not many. I think he's pretty solid. It's the tackles, I think, that are going to make so many things, and it's so much harder to hide tackles. It's just hard to hide tackles. But Arthur Smith does a good job of it. He's one of the most offensive line friendly OCs in the league. So let's see what Broderick and Troy can do because they are going to be huge X factors to this team.
Absolutely huge. And I agree with you. Guards are are naturally protected. Just the nature of your position, you are surrounded by teammates. Tackles, you are put on islands most time. It is often you versus an edge rusher, and oftentimes those are the best defensive players on the field. Mano y mano, can you stop them from getting to the quarterback? And so that's tough. But guard, but also I think the chemistry that you've seen. Zach Frazier came out guns a blazing in his rookie season. Mason McCormick was very good for what you're asking to do. And again, Isaac Seumalo, longtime vet, you don't need to ask much of him to step out of his shell to be good. I'm with you. I think the interior of the Steelers offensive line might be the strength this year, and it might be about, can the tackles figure it out? Because it's going to take time. As I always bring this up, someone's about to say, here he goes with this thing again, but Back in 2013, when David DeCastro, I believe, was in his second year in the NFL, and Marquise Pouncey was in his third or fourth year, they were still gelling as an offensive line. DeCastro in the first game of the season accidentally took out Marquise Pouncey's knee on when he was trying to do a cut block on a defensive tackle. Like, they needed time to gel and to become the unit that they became. And it wasn't until 2014 that I think they really turned a corner as an offensive line unit, and that took 4 years of investing of guys like Marcus Gilbert on top of DeCastro, on top of Pouncey, and bringing along guys like Ramon Foster and then Kelvin Beachum stepping up. Like, it took several swings at that to make that right. It took time for them to develop, but that's why I think there's a little bit of hope for this year for Steelers fans, reasonable hope for this offensive line, because I do think that they've shown some good signs here and there. They just have to develop that chemistry with where they're going to be at, and it's going to take time for Broderick Joneees and Troy Fautanu to get in there. I want to talk more about this topic in the next segment, especially on that Aaron Rodgers point that you brought up, because there's a caller that asked about that specifically. We'll do that next here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Chris Carter, Nick Farabaugh, stick with us. We'll be right back. But first, I want to remind you this show is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the #1 sportsbook in America. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it a little bit more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. I've been using FanDuel to track my favorite matchups, and the app keeps it fresh with new daily promotions and fun ways to bet. It's easy to use, fast to pay out, and makes even more regular season games feel like must-watch events. Whether I'm placing a same-game parlay or watching a bet right into the ninth inning, FanDuel makes it feel like I'm part of the action. New to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets back if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. That's FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. We're back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, here with Nick Farabaugh of PennLive.com. Nick, you brought up Aaron Rodgers. I'm glad you did, because that's a great segue into a question from Joe out of Melbourne, Florida. Joe, take it away.
Joe Mess, Melbourne, Florida. Everybody around here is saying that Rodgers don't stand a chance. He ain't going to make it. If we have a good line, they'll find the holes for the players. He'll be able to be protected to throw that pass. I love your show. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Joe. Appreciate you calling in. Again, it's 412-223-6644. Leave your name, where you're from. Keep your question under a minute, and we'll try to get you on the show as we have with several people here. To Joe's point, Aaron Rodgers is naturally going to be more efficient with the football when he's not under pressure. When he was kept clean last year, PFF, again, grades are one thing, but PFF graded him an 85.8 when he was under pressure. They graded him a 55.7. His pass rating went from an 86.4 when under pressure to a 91.7 when kept clean. Now, Nick, I do think that, Aaron Rodgers, like you said, getting hit is still a big problem at his age, and his mobility is not what it used to be. But he is not like when Ben Roethlisberger got old in 2020 and then was old again in 2021. Ben couldn't move. His knees were basically shot. He couldn't really put much drive on the ball the way that he used to. Aaron Rodgers doesn't seem to have that problem, even though I do believe he might be I think he is the most sacked quarterback of all time in NFL history, which is remarkable to say for him. But that's where I think that it's going to be interesting to see is how much, how well can they protect him and how durable is he? Because he's going to take hits. It's natural in football.
Yeah, I mean, he dealt with injuries last year, hamstring, knee, a few others, just from getting battered all last year. I mean, I can't say this enough. Just go back and watch a few Jets games. Aaron Rodgers got the tar beaten out of him last year. I mean, he truly did. And that is hard to do for a guy that just doesn't move the way he used to, right? I mean, he came off an Achilles injury. He wasn't going to be running around like he was even when he was 35. I think he's got more mobility than maybe I thought he did originally just watching him, but still, he's not going to be some guy that's going to dash around and mitigate sacks through his ability to avoid the rush, right? That's not going to be his thing. So you're going to have really solid protection. And for a guy like Aaron Rodgers, that allows him to still show off his arm talent that he still has. Like the arm is still quite live, I think, Chris. And, we didn't see him push the ball a lot last year down the field because he just didn't have much time last year in New York. Everything had to get out quick. Everything was get it out quickly because Rodgers was going to get pummeled otherwise. It was a way to protect him from getting injured. So the actual importance of having an offensive line that can hold up for 2.6, 2.7 seconds as opposed to losing in 2.3 like that Jets O-line was. I mean, you blitzed at the Jets O-line. They were busting twists and stunts, and Rodgers was getting hit by big 300-pound defensive linemen coming out of their face all day. The Steelers can't have that happen. And so if they can hold up, and specifically if Broderick Jonees and Troy Fautanu can be net positives at tackle, that will be so huge for Rodgers just to have comfortability to turn his back to the defense and go into those play action drops and be able to air it out deep to DK Metcalf and Calvin Austin and be able to open up the full route tree for Jonnu Smith, right? All of that. And Rodgers can help to a degree in some regards, right? He can set protections and he can try and get the ball out quickly. If they're an empty, for example, he loves to go into empty. Obviously, that makes you way more exposed as an offensive line. But that's another thing. If the O-line's straight up good in pass pro, they're able to go into gun and they're able to go into empty and they're able to do different things and have more formational diversity. So all of this works together and all of it comes down to that offensive line. That's why we keep saying, Chris, the offensive line is that important. It really does dictate the Aaron Rodgers play style I think they're going to get.
I agree. And like, if you get Aaron Rodgers, who's comfortable with like the different things you said, turning his back to the defense, to sell play action, being able to sit in the pocket. And like, again, I still think the biggest thing Aaron Rodgers is bringing to the table is his cerebral play at quarterback, his ability to process what defenses are doing and quickly react and put the ball accurately in the spot that he knows is going to most hurt that defense. And when he has time to process and he's not just getting the ball out quick, it brings that skill set, that strength more to the forefront for the Steelers offense. And that's why the O-line is still so important. Again, Rodgers is important. Metcalf is important. Derek Harmon's important. Everybody's important to this team, but the offensive line is going to be what dictates the Steelers, how far the Steelers go this year. Because not only are they about protecting Aaron Rodgers, are they plowing open holes for Jalen Warren and Caleb Johnson? Because if they're doing that, then again, it makes Rodgers' job so easy because now teams got to look for the run more often and they don't know what you're coming with. And that's something that the Steelers haven't had an offense that was truly balanced where people were scared of both sides of the offense, running and pass, since 2017. I think it's been a while. I mean, since Le'Veon Bell. Like James Conner had some good years, but he often got hurt, and then the offensive line started to fall. But I think 2017 was the last time you saw a Steelers offense where teams were like, "Oh man, we got to worry about the pass. Oh man, we got to worry about the run too." And when you have that dichotomy on that you force a defense to have to, oh my gosh, we got to do all these things. It makes preparing for you so much harder because then they can't just take away one thing, and then you start catching them in more mental mistakes, which leads to more opportunities for your offense.
It does. It just opens up the cachet, if you will, for them to kind of throw the kitchen sink at defenses. Having an offensive line that can run block effectively, but also protect your quarterback, especially a quarterback like Aaron Rodgers. Mm-hmm. It's like the biggest thing in the world to have, right? I mean, one of the greatest things about having a great offensive line is that you can take pressure off the quarterback. And I think that's something that Aaron Rodgers at this stage in his career, Is he better off not shouldering the load? Probably. Can he still win you some games every now and then? I think he can. But I don't think this is going to necessarily be a guy that you want shouldering the load and carrying you just because your offense, like you don't want him to be Joe Burrow with the Bengals, right? Where Burrow is running for his life and is elevating that offensive line that was just not good last year. If he could stand back there and be the driver of the bus and just kind of take it there while being helped around him, that's a lot of help because that raises the ceiling for the Steelers. That raises their ability to compete with really good teams because that is exactly how Sam Darnold was very good in Minnesota, for example, last year. Great offensive line, great surrounding cast. But Rodgers right now in his career is a guy that needs some of the pressure taken off him. Great run game, play action, good O-line. It all goes into that. And the offensive line is the crux of basically all of that. If you want to take pressure off your quarterback, go get him an offensive line.
I'm right with you. Go get an offensive line. And again, here's the thing. If you develop an offensive line that makes Aaron Rodgers feel comfortable and makes him feel, oh, I can trust this pocket and I can and we can run the ball and I'm going to feel good. What do you think that's going to do for the rookie quarterback that they draft next year, which we fully anticipate them to do if everything works out the way I did that in an episode on Monday about that where I think that's there. That's part of the line. But like if you have a rookie quarterback and they're coming into that's one thing that Ben Roethlisberger had, right? When he came into the Steelers, he had Jeff Hardings, he had Alan Faneca, he had Marvell Smith, he had an offensive line that whooped butt. And so he could be crazy Ben. I'm dropping back, I'm trusting my own line, I'm holding on to the ball forever, I'm gonna run around a little bit, then I'm gonna throw this over here, and then we're gonna run the ball really well because we can do that. That's why I think this is so important for the Steelers to get right. So I'm right with you, Nick. I think that is still the big thing, and it can make Rodgers' year that much different. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we got some more questions from you, the listeners and the viewers, specifically about positions and some potential flips that could happen. We'll talk about that next here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Chris Carter, Nick Farabaugh, stick with us. We'll be right back. We're back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm here with Nick Farabaugh of PennLive.com. Nick, there's always some questions about could this player play here? Could this player play there? And sometimes we don't get a chance to get to him, but we're going to get a chance to get to him there. And we're going to start off with Broderick Jones because while we're talking about the position flip from right tackle to left tackle, some people are wondering, should there be a different flip in mind? Here's Eric from Rochester with his question.
Hey, Chris. This is Eric from Rochester, New York. Hope you're doing well. I'm sure you're aware that Mekhi Becton transitioned from tackle to guard last year, and it rejuvenated his career, winning a Super Bowl with the Eagles and getting signed by the Chargers. I feel Broderick Jones is way too athletic to not work out. If he continues to struggle, how would you feel about moving him to guard and seeing how he does prior to making a decision on his fifth-year option? Thanks, Chris. Go Steelers.
Thank you, Eric, for your question. As always, call like Eric did at 412-223-6644. Leave your name, where you're from. Keep your question under a minute. Nick, I want to give you first crack at this. Should the Steelers or will the Steelers ever consider moving Broderick Jones to guard?
I don't think they will. I think this is a position switch that happens with another team if it ever happens. That's what I feel like. And that's what happened with Becton, right? He didn't work out with the Jets as a tackle, went to Philly. Philly had this vision for him as a guard. He was really good, and it worked out. Could Broderick Jones work a guard? I don't think it's crazy to think he could be a good guard. He's very athletic. He's strong. So there's positives there. But, I mean, his technique base right now, Chris, is just pretty raw around the edges.
Yeah.
His hand usage, his footwork, all of it, right? So, I mean, just moving inside for him doesn't necessarily fix things, especially because he, catches guys instead of, getting up on them. In the interior, if you catch guys, man, and you get beat speed to power in your chest, it's much worse than playing at tackle. So there's definitely things that could work for Broderick at guard. I mean, he'd be more protected. There's things that could work there if he has to. But I don't think this is a thing that happens in Pittsburgh if it happens. It happens if he busts out of Pittsburgh, signs a 1-year prove-it deal somewhere else that needs a guard spot. I mean, people forget Mekhi Becton won that guard job too, right? He had to compete for that, and he won it. So that's to me, a post-Steelers move if it does happen. So could it happen eventually in his career? Sure. Is it going to happen in Pittsburgh? I doubt it.
I'm right with you. The Steelers did not draft Broderick Jones to move him to guard. If it doesn't work at tackle, they're moving on from him and they're trying to figure something else out. And they're going to try to. I think that, like you said, it would happen with someone else there. Broderick Jones, when they drafted him, they said he was raw. They talked about this in the draft, like, hey, this guy's. And again, Broderick's still young. He is still the youngest player that's starting on the offensive line right now. Like, even considering Troy Fautanu in his second year and Zach Frazier and Mason McCormick who came in last year as well. Like, he is still the youngest player on the offensive line. It was known that it was going to take time for him to develop, for him to become the kind of player that was going to become a good NFL consistent tackle. And they knew that. If you abandon that a year, like 3 years into that project, I think that you might as well just abandon the whole thing, unless you see something there and he does just turn into a magical guard. I don't think that's it. He is built to be a prototypical NFL tackle, and yes, he has his struggles, but to me, nah, he's staying right at tackle. And I'm even giving him this year and next year to figure out left tackle, because he's been at right tackle for his first 2 years in the NFL. Give him time to work, see how he fits in there, and see the chemistry he gets to develop with a guy like Isaac Seumalo to his right.
Yeah, I mean, if he's not good this year, I think naturally they're going to look to replace him. He might still be on the roster, but nothing obviously will be given after that. I mean, if you're talking about guys that could move to guard, I think the other tackle is probably more prototypical for that. Fautanu is a guy that was thought to be a guard by many coming out. So I don't think Troy's going to move to tackle either, unless that just doesn't work out this year. But like, when you have more years on the timeline too, that helps, right? Broderick's already in year 3. Like, the Steelers have to make a decision on this 5th-year option next year. Like, this time next year, we will already know if Broderick has his 5th-year option picked up. And so you're not moving him to guard in the middle of the season or anything like that. I guess they could theoretically do it next offseason if they wanted to, but again, it just doesn't seem right for a guy that has been emphatically declared by the general manager of this team that he's a left tackle. It's just simple as that.
I'm with you in that. I think that this is a very big prove-it year for Broderick. I do wonder, though, if because of their salary, if they just say, you know what, we're slapping the 5th-year extension on him just to give him time to continue to grow, unless he's objectively terrible. Like, if he takes a step up this year, but still isn't like very good, and like I do wonder if the Steelers say, hey, we're going to give ourselves an extra year padded on just to see if this can work out. That's where I think things could be interesting for Broderick Jones, especially, again, playing at left tackle. But it's so important to get that right. And again, like, I think there might be an extra emphasis, because if the Steelers get him right, then the rest of the offensive line, I think, starts to fall into place a lot easier.
Yeah, it does. And that's the key thing about Broderick is, like, if he doesn't work out, they have to immediately try and fill one of the most valuable positions in football. Like, left tackle is such a key linchpin, right? You talk about great teams and how they have great left tackles. Like, it's a general thing. And so he is such a huge part of this, because we saw what he could do in the run game in his rookie season when he was such a force multiplier as a run blocker. I mean, he cleared lanes in the second half of the 23 season. They need at least that, right? I mean, listen, his 5th-year option is going to be very hefty. So he's going to have to play, I think, even better than you're saying, Chris. I kind of think he's going to have to play at least average to get it, because it's just it's not a small number. And so I'm interested to see kind of how that comes about. But I do think there's no question about this. He's so much more important to them at tackle than guard that I don't even know what the rationale would be, unless he just completely sucks at tackle this year, in which case they're moving on, I think.
Let's get to another question here. This one about a former teammate of Broderick before he even got to the Steelers and him switching positions. Take it away, Donovan from Jacksonville.
Hey, Chris. This is Donovan Hall calling from Jacksonville, Florida. Longtime Steelers fan. Love the show. Hey, I was curious if Broderick Jones playing the tackle position, the left tackle position, not at a high level, and with this trade now having all these tight ends in the tight end room, would the Steelers consider moving Darnell Washington to left tackle? He has great size, good feet, He could put on a few pounds and follow the path of Jason Peters and become an all-pro left tackle. Thanks, man. Love the show.
Thank you, Donovan. Thanks for calling in like everyone else does. 412-223-6644. Leave your name, where you're from. Keep your question under a minute. Nick, listen, if Darnell Washington really wanted to he could become the size. He has the size to be the NFL. I mean, I think he accidentally admitted to us he's like closer to 300 pounds right now than people even realized when we were in the locker room with him. But at the same time, like, I could see this maybe. And I get that this question's even louder because of the Jonnu Smith trade, but he was talking about how they're moving him around the offense right now. They're trying to put him in different spots as a receiver. I still think that he can be a good tight end in the NFL, and that I wouldn't be down for this move unless like they saw something crazy. And again, Broderick Jones doesn't work out, and they're like, you know what? Let's do this crazy thing here.
I don't know. If I was Kirby Smart and could go back in time to like Darnell's freshman year, I probably would put him at tackle. But now that he's like a third-year NFL player, I think it's far less likely. Listen, I think he could be a great offensive tackle. I really do. I mean, we've seen guys do that before. Jason Peters is obviously the most notable example of that, where he just became an all-pro and such a great player. But I don't think Darnell is going to make that move. I think he's far likelier to be in the vein of Mercedes Lewis. I think that is a fair vein to put him in, where he's a great blocking tight end for 13 years in the NFL. He's just a hoss kicker, right? I think that's really what he is. He last year, if you turn on the tape, I don't feel like people are talking enough about the leap he made as a blocker last year. He truly did become an elite blocking tight end. He's an elite blocking tight end now. And the Steelers need that even more after the Jonnu trade, Chris, because how are you going to play 12 personnel all the time without a guy that can really plus block from the inline spot? And so they need a guy that can block really well. And they don't have a natural replacement for him on this roster either. Like, I mean, listen, if Hayward is the fourth tight end, they really only have one true plus blocker in that tight end room. So he's really important. And so he's not moving to tackle. But listen, I always love this fun conversation because I know in the crazy brain, if they did do it, he could do it. But there should be no plan right now for them to do it, even though I think it would be so much fun to see if he could.
It would be fun. It'd be fun. It's always interesting to see these kind of flips and in the what if verse. But to your point, he's been in the tight end for a bit, and he's also not only is a blocking tight end. I think he's also underutilized a lot in the passing game. Like he doesn't have to even run a crazy route, and I think he's getting better at running his routes. But like you roll him out to the flat, you hit him, you let him run a slant, and he just has. And there's just not a defender that's right on top of him who can just latch themselves onto his waist and try to bring him down immediately. He is a load to bring down. And he's athletic. He can jump over you. He can stiff arm you. He can run through you. He is, I think, a hidden weapon for this Steelers roster. I don't think that a move to left tackle is coming. It would be interesting if they did, but I don't think that that's in the cards for Darnell Washington. A lot of things that are in the card for the Steelers though this year. We'll get to all of those as we continue our shows this week here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Thank you for joining us here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Let people can find you, follow you, get more of your work.
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter, Farabaugh FB, Blue Sky Nick Farabaugh. Make sure to read Steelers Stuff, PennLive.com/Steelers. I have a big feature on Cam Hayward coming out soon, so make sure to check that out. And then check out the YouTube channel, Steelers Breakdown, on Penn Live.
Absolutely. He's Nick Farabaugh. Thank you, Nick, for joining us. Thank you all for joining us here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, all social media accounts. Same handle everywhere, at Carter Critiques. You can read my work in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette by going to post-gazette.com. You can find me here on the Locked On Steelers podcast every day, Monday through Friday, all your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Back here tomorrow with another episode of the Locked On Steelers podcast.